Hello. Today I'm going to dive for you a small crayfish. I did a video of a Near Enough Crayfish not long ago, but it was a little bigger and it went in my bass fly box. So this one is a little smaller, size 8. We're going to do today's fly on a jig hook. It's a Kumoto. I'm going to add a small dumbbell eye and some 25 thousandths lead wire, or lead-free wire, to turn the hook over and get to ride point up. The key to this pattern, one of the keys, are those zonkers we're going to use for claws. I'm going to use a little pinch of that rabbit fur and some Hare's Ear Plus dubbing in rusty orange. Also going to have a rubber leg and a piece of crystal flash. And there are those claws that are prepared, and that hackle. I didn't mention that before. And we're going to hold it together with size 6/0 dark brown thread. So this is a jig hook. I'm going to start just behind the bend, behind the eye, work my way back to the hook point to get a thread base. And I feel like if you cover all that up and make this like one solid piece, especially when the super glue hits it, it'll hold things together. So I'm just above the eye of the hook, and I do a little bump there. It'll help me center those dumbbell eyes as we put them in. And we're going to do a couple of cross wraps each way just to hold them in place. And then I'm going to fiddle with them and push them around and make sure I have them centered. And so then when I get close, ultimately, we're going to go cross wraps, a few more cross wraps. And then I don't know if you want to call that a parachute wrap, where it goes around the dumbbell eye but not around the hook shank. And then it's starting to get snug and in place. I'll do about 5 wraps in each direction, cross wraps. And then a couple more of those parachute wraps just to tighten everything up and lock it in place. So one last push there, and I'm pretty happy with the way things are. And we'll come in with some super glue and soak all those thread wraps. Yeah, these hooks, I went into a fly shop and I was looking for small jig hooks, and for some reason, well, probably not some reason, these are the hooks that they had there. And probably because all the smaller ones were sold out, they got some assortment and they had some bigger ones left. And I bought them anyways because I had this fly pattern in mind. And I'm just getting around to doing it, and I thought I'd make a video of one of them. So here's another material. I didn't show it up front, but they're just plastic eyes. I think I mentioned these a long time ago. I got these in a bargain bin somewhere, but you could just as easily melt a piece of monofilament and make a little set of eyes to put in. So we'll come here. Now I like to hold the end of that lead-free wire with the pliers and wrap backwards. And mostly so that when I come over it with the thread, I'm wrapping in the opposite direction, and it doesn't pull that end loose, if that makes sense. That lead-free wire is a little tougher to pinch off or to break off than probably standard wire or lead wire, so I'm going to snip this end. If I had more room, I might have flattened that out with pliers and just kind of wrapped it down. So we'll give it a squeeze and start back over it, get some thread wraps. And basically here, I don't think you have to cover the thread entirely. I think it's more about some cross wraps and some sink between the lead wire, and that kind of holds it from turning on the hook. So there's our brown crystal flash. We'll start that in. Come behind the eyes and put a couple of wraps, and put those in the material clip, and we'll add in our rubber leg. So we'll do an orange rubber leg. Not sure how much any of this, you can vary the colors. Early in the season, I don't think you'll see a lot of orange crayfish. I think they tend to be dark, like a dark olive or a brown. And I don't think the legs have to be, the rubber legs have to be any color in particular, any length. I think just add a little movement and there you go. So I'm going to use some of that Hare's Ear Plus dubbing, and I'm going to cover those thread wraps around the eyes and just kind of finish off underneath what is essentially the head. These things swim backwards, right? So this is the head, and we'll come in. Well, it looks like everything's covered, but I think I'm going to come back with a little more dubbing, and I'm going to fill in that low spot with a little dubbing, and mostly for one reason. What I'm thinking here is I'm going to put a pinch of that. It was from a rabbit fur coat, and that one section was kind of orangish, and it has the guard hairs in it. They're nice and straight. So I'm going to use a pinch of those over top of the eyes just to add that, add some whiskers there as well. So without the dubbing underneath, I was afraid that it was going to, and it was the smaller diameter behind the dubbing, I was afraid it was going to caulk them way up in the air. So I want them to ride or to point out kind of level. So we'll wrap those in and trim off the excess rabbit. And here's a piece of copper wire. This again, I don't think I think if I listed all these materials up front and showed pictures of them, we'd have 5 minutes of materials and 5 minutes of tying the fly. So I was trying to look for a way to shorten that stuff up front for you. None of this is monetized. I'm not looking for folks to watch my videos end to end or whatever. It's all about sharing here. So it's more important that I share, the pattern, the tricks, and just a little bit about what I do. So we'll bring in that hackle, and it's not a saddle hackle, but it's kind of a longish hackle. And so here's one of those pieces of cross-cut rabbit fur, and I'm getting the end started back a little bit, and I pull it up under the eye, and then wind it in. And now we'll do the one on my side. And the crosscut, to be honest with you, I bought it by accident, and I've been using it for things like this. I think we used to wrap some cross-cut rabbit around the larger hooks to make like fur-bodied big flies, things that you might throw at bass or something. But I didn't intend to buy the crosscut, but it works great for this. So we have the claws tied in, and the wire and the hackle are waiting there, and we're going to add some more of that Hare's Plus dubbing. So we have some a dubbing noodle created. We work our way back right behind the claws, tuck that up in there nice and tight. Probably take a couple of noodles here. I could probably make them a little longer if there wasn't a camera in the way, but we'll settle for a couple and fill in all the space between the eyes, and then those dumbbell eyes back by the eye of the hook. And it's probably okay if it tapers from a little larger back by the eyes of the bug to a little smaller right behind the dumbbell eyes. I don't know that we're going for this thing to be totally realistic as much as I think I wanted to get down and kind of crawl along the bottom and be able to jerk it and drag the bottom. I think ideally if those lead dumbbell eyes stirred up a little mud while this thing was bouncing across the bottom, I think that might be the ticket for some of those trout. So we're back behind the eyes, or the dumbbell eyes, and we'll bring our hackle around. And we could have done this a couple of different ways too. I could have tied it in up by the dumbbell eyes and wrapped it back toward the other end, and then used the wire to hold it with, cross wrap the wire toward the hook eye. But I wanted it to these hackle to taper from larger to smaller back towards the hook eye. So we'll get that hackle tip trapped down. And snip off the excess. And I am going to use that wire and cross wrap. And this is one of those rare occasions where I'll wrap the wire toward me. I usually like to do the softer materials in the conventional direction over the top away from me, and then or over the top toward me, and then do the wire over the top away from me so that when you tie it down it pulls tighter. But in this case that seemed a bit more challenging, so I just went with the old standby, the actual cross wraps. So we'll do a turn in front and a turn behind the wire. Gonna block the camera view here and do a couple more wraps over the wire. And maybe one more so that we can break off the wire. And this wire is a lot like that lead-free wire was for me. This thicker copper wire was kind of a pain to break off, but it gave up. So everything's held in place pretty well. And we'll come back with a little more of that Hare's Ear plus dubbing. And basically I'm just going to fill in back there. And I'm not sure how necessary the cross wraps around the dumbbell eyes were. If those were just brown from the thread and the way they started out, that would have been fine too. But we filled in all the way around. So I'm going to do something cute here too. And I was kind of thinking about this right there. So I'm going to whip finish around the dumbbell eye, just so I don't fill in or cover any of that hook. There's probably plenty of room there, but this is just me being experimenting as I go. So I'm going to whip finish around the dumbbell eye about 4 or 5 turns with a little super glue on the thread. And I'm about 100% sure that's not going to come loose. And we'll snip off the excess thread, and that's basically it. I'm going to come back, and I probably should have zoomed out so you could see it better, but I'm going to trim those rubber legs, probably about 1.5 to 2 hook lengths. And then the brown crystal flash for the whiskers, I'm going to make those that a little longer than the legs. And that's essentially the fly. And I hope to drag that along the bottom of some trout streams and entice those buggers to come down and eat one. So if you hung in there to the end and you want to learn more about me, look me up on Amazon. And until next time, be safe.